Hey guys, this is going to be my file on Lowell, Massachusetts. But before we get into the slideshow, I want to present a couple of boots on the grounds content creators for you. First one is David Wayne. He does some excellent boots on the ground in that area of the States. This video has him walking the streets of Lowell. And what they do is provide visual evidence of what looks to be post-cataclysm remains. You also get a lot of the red brick beauties in the background, so definitely recommend checking out his work. You can see as he goes through the back alleys and gets some nice close-ups of the brickwork, and a lot to take in that area. And the next is ShawnyBee. Both of these guys like to take in my content, so I figured I'd give him a shout out. Shawny's got tons of Lowell content here. Let's just scroll through and have a look at what he brings to you. Just move that around. And again, if you're looking for the juice in real time, these are guys that are in the area doing the boots on the ground. It's just something I'm not able to do being on the other side of the continent, so I appreciate the work both of you guys do, and I appreciate you watching my videos, and I certainly encourage anyone watching this video to go check out their work as well to get a nice close-up of what's going on. Without further ado, let's take a look at Lowell, Mass. So let's get a little geography going. We got Lowell, Mass, northwest of Boston, done Worcester, Providence, Hartford, done a lot of these cities, and you can see there's sort of a industrial metropolis even in the old world. In this region here, you're going to see a lot of red brick in this video, a lot of infrastructure, canal infrastructure, things along those lines. You can see the population demographics from the time period of the turn of the 20th century. We're just under 100,000 people, so it's a good-sized city coming right up through the 1800s as a part of the narrative, that early resettlement, I would say, as the old world gets taken over and becomes a new world. And you can see from these old photographs the age and wear on the streets, the curb work. Amazing architecture, and of course the streetcars, always a part of the old world infrastructure, as I like to say. We can see also the buildings right on the canals, and a lot of this would be, of course, the New World construction with the matchstick style balconies over top of the canal. Certainly not old world construction, but post-cataclysm reclaiming is my suggestion here on this channel. This is one of those classic photos where you get a lot of strangeness going on. People in the higher reaches standing right on the top of what looks to be a 4 or 5 story tower going on in this area. Some interesting structures as well. So is this a part of the reclaiming of the old world and the resettling? It really has to make you wonder. Same area here, a little bit further on down the line, and you can see how things change, and it starts to become much more of a wasteland, but you can still see the majesty in the architecture. Massive structures. The Appleton block, we have a rendering here, the Appleton block. So part of the problem I have with the narrative we're given about history has to do with the size of the architecture itself, the vastness of it compared to the technology we are said to have had at the time. And then, of course, not just the size, but the need for them to decorate in the manner that they did. It seems quite silly when you really get down to it. An early postcard here of the Armory in Lowell, and I suspect there's probably a connection with the old armories and the air travel that they were said to have had in the old world. A lot of the armories consisting of a large open area. So it makes you wonder in that department what actually went on and why the need to build like a castle. If you look at the way we build in the modern day, we don't add flair. It's just not something that's done. And back in the 1800s, we are being told that flair was just something that was easily replicated across the realm. So you really have to wonder. The armories themselves are certainly worth a closer look. I believe I made an armory video sometime in the past. Maybe something worth revisiting moving forward. An interesting note about the armories as well is that they're prevalent on both sides of the border, the Canadian and American border. So it makes you wonder if this is going back to a time where that border was not drawn in the way it is in the modern day, because those lines all being drawn in that 1860s period, post-American Civil War and Canadian Confederation. So there's something to do with the way they carved this place up that goes back to that time period. Here's the old auditorium, and giving us some old world indications. In the foreground you can see the cobbled streets. You can see the acanthus leaf capitals on the columns here, and the wonderful decorations along the top of the circular portion. I often wonder too if these were actually dulled down or tamed, squared off, flattened off in certain areas, and if once upon a time there was more going on in the upper reaches of these structures, such as this auditorium. And this nice early photo showing us Lowell with the streetcars and the horse and buggy sharing the roadways. Always good to take note of the width of the roadways and then the age of the infrastructure, because this whole trolley system really at this time period, in its infancy, really a decade or two at the most, we are being told. And then of course we're always told the trams were originally designed to be pulled by horses, and the miraculous discovery of electricity is what changed that. So it makes you wonder. And just an ad for sarsaparilla. And this is giving you again a bit of a skyline, old world skyline here in Lowell. And stone bridges, the Concord River Bridge. Quite the technology, quite the feat, building a lot of this old infrastructure in stone. Links up with the canals in the area as well, all sorts of canals. The hypothesis being that all of this infrastructure is coming out of the old world, and the stories were given for the construction of many of these, a fabrication to fit a new timeline, a false timeline. And there's a nice look of the factory district along the river. You can see that there's no separation between the river itself and the buildings. The buildings are actually the banks of the river. So again, all part of that infrastructure. And another thing to look for when you're doing this research is the towers on the buildings, many of which don't still stand, but many that still do and take the form of churches or perhaps city halls that for some reason survived the demolition of the urban renewal in the 20th century, Lowell being one of those, as we'll see moving forward. And you have the streetcars going to places of recreation as well. Michelle Gibson has hypothesized how all of that, the energetics of all of that system having to do with the old world, and then the repurposing into the new world and the harnessing of the energy of the people to run the grid. A very interesting hypothesis. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, a lot of these postcards coming from cardcow.com, a fantastic visual resource if you're looking for anything for a specific region or building type. Certainly recommend checking that website out for doing your research. quite prevalent to the streetcar narrative here in Lowell. We'll move on to more of the architecture. The Fleur de Lis Club, French Catholic Association. And as I often like to say, if you're not seeing a photograph, it's not for lack of trying. It means I couldn't find a photograph to match the building you're seeing in the postcard form. Which is also curious. I suggest that some of these are obscured from our vision in internet search. We're living at a time where there's so much has been uploaded to the internet that you would expect a lot more of this to be readily available online. And curiously, a lot of it is not. The old ladies' home. A seminary, nice old structure. We have one of these interesting triangular buildings as well. Anyone from the area probably recognizes some of these streets. Of course, if you're from the area, as I always like to say, don't hesitate to add your perspective to the comment section. Always adds a lot to these videos. An interesting part of my research surrounding the schools, as well as the architecture that existed, that is said to have been a learning institution in the 1800s, such as this structure here. Keeping in mind that the education system in the States really not getting on its feet until the turn of that 20th century. Yet you have all these massive structures dedicated to educating the youth of the time. We have a chapel in the cemetery. If you check out some of the boots on the ground that David Wayne does and ShawnyBee, some of their work takes them into some of the cemeteries, and they examine the landscaping itself as it relates to the surrounding area, and hypothesis being that there's possibly something being covered up from the old world and having been turned into a cemetery in the new world. So there's definitely more to the cemetery narrative as well that's worthy of a deeper dive. We have some flooding in Lowell, and a quick search showing me that 1936 was a devastating flood year for the New England area, Lowell included. There's the sarsaparilla laboratory. We saw the ad earlier, the female figure and the child. The stacks as well, something to do with, you look at the infrastructure of the old world, they had to have manufacturing plants. And I think a lot of what we see, including breweries and massive manufacturing plants, were repurposed by the robber baron tycoons. And a whole new wave of manufacturing took over. But I think a lot of this infrastructure is coming out of the old world. The First Baptist Church. And there's a look at it in the modern day. You can see looking like the brick or stone has been painted white. First Congregational Church, nice looking windows. This one still stands as well. Quite a bit still intact, it seems, in Lowell, Mass. Now, of course, I think that makes sense because it's fitting a narrative where this part of North America in our timeline is said to be much older than other parts of North America. So a lot, I think, could be left up and explained. The Immaculate Conception Church still stands there. It is in the modern day, looking very old. Built in the 1870s, we are being told, at a time when the population of Lowell was about 40,000 people. But they were just banging up stone churches like it was nothing, apparently. Some of the interior for you. In the 1870s, keep in mind, it's a lot of scaffolding. get to the upper reaches in there. Having that old world feel, something we associate Europe with. But we're finding in this research that this type of architecture was quite common and prevalent in most locations that we look at. St. Anne's Church, this one still stands as well, another stone church. No doubt they'll say coming out of the same era. Impeccable stonework. The St. John the Baptist Church, and this is a good visual on what they do to these structures. You can see how it stands in the modern day, how it's been decapitated halfway up the two towers in the front, and really downsized, and a very common occurrence that I see in my research, what they do to these structures over time, so as not to draw your eye, I think, to the majesty and get you asking questions, really. That's what I suspect. St. Michael's Church. And no doubt most of these structures coming out of that same time period at the mid to late 1800s. Now, if I go, this doesn't look like the same structure. It's also saying it's St. Michael's, so that's confusing as well. Could it be that, again, we're looking at some alteration? Not sure, hard to tell. Possibly another structure lost to time. St. Patrick's Church still stands. And there you have it in the modern day. Now, is there a difference again? That one looks like it's the same. But this is confusing as well because we have the St. Patrick's Church having been destroyed in the 1904 fire. And here on ForgottenNewEngland.com, the link will be in the description. We have an explanation of the Grand Fires, plural, of 1904 in Lowell. Now this article goes on to explain some of the damage that it was incurred and loss of life and all the rest of it. You can read more of it. I'll show you a couple of structures that apparently didn't survive. So this is the Huntington Hall, said to have been destroyed in the 1904 fire. And another building said to have been destroyed was the O'Donnell and Gilbride Company department store, but I could not find a visual on the structure itself. So Lowell having its fair share of fires and floods, of course. Here's back to that St. Patrick's Church. Here's the interior of that one. And they'll probably be telling us that they rebuilt this after the fire or something along those lines. Don't put a lot of stock into a lot of the narrative that we can't really verify, except for some newspaper clippings that are hard to trust, really. Here's St. Peter's, so no shortage of churches in Lowell, Mass. And there's a look at that amazing structure. And we have a construction date of 1892 for this one. And there's a look at the interior postcard form. No shortage of spectacular churches. What do you think? Alright, we come to the City Hall in Lowell. And we're told this one was built in 1893 with its Richardsonian Romanesque styling and a 180-foot bell tower. We don't get a start to finish date, we just get the single year of 1893, which is so common in the research. We don't get the full story of the construction because I don't think they have the full story, to be honest with you. And if you scrutinize it any further, usually you'll get a negative response by the keepers of the information, let's say. That's what people who have dug a little further into this stuff have come across. Here it is, still standing to this day, 1893. That year, that was the panic, the Great Panic of 1893, that sent the states into a financial depression. But so many structures like this were said to have been built at that time period and right through that decade, making very little sense as to why you would continue constructing in such a manner if the purse strings were so tight. And there's a rare look at the interior. I had a lot of trouble finding anything from the interior of this one as well, but you can see again the magnificent styling, the wrought iron, the amazing detailing. 1893. Oh, the City Hall in Lowell, Mass. is a really old world banger, I would suggest. And if you're in the area, I suggest definitely checking this one out. Something special. Apparently the whole City Hall district was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1975. I have talked a little bit about that too. Truman had a lot to do with signing the National Register of Historic Places into being in 1949. At the same time, they're passing the urban renewal, which I suspect is making some areas exempt from demolition, while at the same time destroying most of the rest. And I know a lot of these areas have been taken off that list as well and demolished down through time. So it feels like almost a false attempt to preserve some of this, the National Register of Historic Places. This is the 1898 fire. And this one reads like a lot of the same old stories for the great fires. This is the business district. It says destroys nearly all of the business buildings on the north side of Commercial Avenue in 1898. And that article goes on to list some of the structures that were destroyed. I'll put the link to that in the description as well, if you're interested in digging a little deeper. Now here's the fire headquarters at the time, so no slouch of a building, that's for sure. Massive red bricks, you have the tower, and you have, of course, the primitive steam-powered technology to fight these fires. Not really jiving with the architecture we're seeing, as usual. There's the Fisk building, and a rendering of that. So a lot of, you have again the dormers coming off what looked to be a bit of a mansard-style roof here as well. And I have mentioned that what seems to happen over time is that they get decapitated and flattened, and the whole roof structure, whether it was from a fire induced or whatever it is, they tend to dull these buildings down, and they start to look like the buildings we're used to seeing with the flat roofs, like possibly a building like this maybe had a dormers and mansard style roof along the top. So something to keep an eye open for if you're doing this kind of research. This building still stands, the Hildreth. Nice looking, what would you call that, a bay window? Yeah, smacks of old world, definitely eye-catching. But if we look here too, the rounding over, a lot of the portions in the upper area seem to have been flattened off at the top, and then they just cap it with some tin, flash it with some tin to protect it from the weather. So that process ongoing as usual. General Hospital, St. John's Hospital, couldn't find much on these. There's the railway station and the Richardson Hotel in the background here. We'll look at the railway station a little bit more as we move on, but I believe this is the Richardson Hotel. Actually, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, sorry. We have an 1892 date, we have something building here, and a fire, and this looking like it's in the 30s or 40s, probably 40s maybe. Not sure what structure that is. I don't think it's that hotel, but I included it. I found it in my research, and I'm not sure what building it's attached to. So yet another destruction story for you. We have the jail. They built them fancy in Lowell to house the prisoners. A fantastic library, Memorial Hall City Library. And this one apparently gets the 1890 to 1893 build date construction timeline. So that's what I mean. We get a timeline on this one, but we get another one built in 1893, and we don't get it. The City Hall built in 1893. We don't get a start to finish on that for some reason. But these are being constructed at the same time, we're being told. There it still stands, and impeccable old world architecture, so common in that region. Look at the materials used for the roof here, like stone tiles that taper along as you move up the slope. That's some serious business there. If you're in the construction trades, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Maybe even if you're not. And this is giving you a nice look of the infrastructure being a part of the surrounding nature, I guess you could say. There's no line really between nature and what we call infrastructure. Alright, we have the temple for these guys. That still stands. You get the symbolism, you get the city hall in the background. This one's interesting, the Orphelinat Franco-American. I found nothing else on this one as well. Another one of those buildings which I would suspect has been decapitated, if it still stands at all, and would be completely unrecognizable as the structure it once was. The old post office. This one's built in 1893. Again, would you look at that? Not very imaginative. They just cram them all into the same years. It's unbelievable. I don't know if I believe that at all. That's not that long ago, too. 1893. You'd think there would be some more photographs of these things going up. Here it is. Still stands. Lowell really retaining a lot of its old world majesty. And of course, you have to have the old bell towers with the clock, and the columns and the arches and the receiver on top. We also have another post office, still stands as well. Different purpose, old world structure, I think so. Repurposing going on, modification of the architecture is my suggestion. Not sure. Hard to know what to make of the timelines. We've got very muddy timelines here, so a lot of it can be confusing. But amazing architecture, definitely. Highland School, there it is again. Normal School. I did a video on normal schools some time back as well. If you're not familiar with the normal school narrative, it has to do with teaching the teachers what to teach. What were they going to indoctrinate the youth with? And this was a very common practice in the 1800s. And a lot of the normal schools end up becoming university buildings of some sort. There's the normal school, or a normal school. I don't even think it's the same one. But this is also designated as a normal school in Lowell. We have a textile school with the arches. Why not? Another textile school. Doesn't look like the same one. Actually, it's probably just a wing of that one, maybe. And we're coming to the end of the file here. Certainly not least the telephone exchange building. And I believe this one still stands. I saw it in one of Shawny's videos. You'll have to look out for that. And I do also believe that they have the these caps on them still. But if you want to see that, I suggest you go through his videos. Little teaser for you there. And the old train station. We saw it a few times already. Looking a lot like, the post office and the same type of architecture we're used to seeing. And as usual, with a lot of my videos, we end with a YMCA and a YWCA. Looking like we've got one of each here in Lowell. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I thank you for being with me on this journey. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.